to the audience. Absolute honor, privilege to have all of you here today. So I'll start with Louise from the bottom of the screen. Louise, maybe a quick hello. What are we expecting for today? And as I said to you, Diane, thank you for being here and for accepting the invite from RICS Lionheart trustee as well. I can't thank you enough, and today is a great day for me. So Diane, just quickly, a quick hello to all the participants in Mauritius and around the world.
Hi everyone, looking forward to this, this webinar.
Awesome, Diane, thank you very much indeed for these sharp and snappy comments. Jess is a friend, Art is a friend as well. Just quickly, your thoughts on the webinar before we move on.
Thanks, Anil. Hi, everyone. Thanks for the invitation to participate. I feel privileged to be virtually sitting alongside the other ladies on this panel. And Anil, can I just say, on behalf of the Mauritian property industry and the property industry at large, thank you for everything that you do. This is indeed a milestone for you, for the industry. You have made a huge contribution to so many professionals out there, so thank you.
Thank you, Jess. Arti, quickly, again, Arti, a friend as well, chartered surveyor. Arti, just quickly, your thoughts on the webinar for today, huge webinar for today.
Yes, so first of all, congratulations, Anil, to you for your 100th webinar, and it's such an honor to be actually present amongst such great women, such strong women. And I'm very excited for today. I think it's going to be an exciting session and a very useful session, just to understand how far we've come on our journey. So it's a journey actually I started a good 15 years ago.
Wow, thank you, Arti, for being here again. Huge honor to have you. And finally, we have the Dr. Louise Brooke-Smith, the first women president of RICS in 2014-2015. After 146 years of the existence of RICS, my role model, my inspiration. Louise, thank you for being here. What are we expecting on the webinar, and why are you so passionate about diversity and inclusion?
Well, absolutely fantastic to be here and with such a great group of people, and your enthusiasm is contagious. Forget COVID, your enthusiasm is by far more important. We are going to have a really good chat discussion about where we've come from and where we're going to in terms of diversity. We've come quite a long way and we should be celebrating it, and that will be my message through my presentation. So we'll be highlighting good and bad practice, but some really good stuff coming up, I hope.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Arti, for this milestone webinar hosting from Mauritius. So can I ask you please to switch off your video quickly? I'm just going to do a quick introduction before I introduce Louise formally, and then we'll have the panel as well. So let me just make sure I've got the slide ready as well so just bear with me, and I'm just going to share the screen as well. Okay, so just bear with me, and right. So here we go, and making sure I've got the right beginning. So everybody, if you can see my screen, and if you can see the PowerPoint, if you can just put your hands up, please, for us to validate that you can see it before we really kickstart. So thank you as well. Okay, good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here today. And obviously, a historic milestone for me and from your support as well for the 100 Webinar CPD Talk. And it's a timely one where we've got the 4 role model with us today. How far have we come on the diversity journey? Okay, so just quick agenda as well. So that we have a quick e-housekeeping. And this is the agenda for today, where we will be talking about, obviously I'll do a quick 5 to 10 minute introduction. Louise will take over. We'll have a quick poll survey. And then we'll have a panel at 6:40 to 7 p.m. where just Louise Artidan will intervene. We'll have a part 2 by Louise, and then concluded by Diane, and then we'll take some more question and answers as we go through. So of course, if you have any question, any queries, put them in, any example, anything like you want to put in on the Q&A, please do let us know. So just quick, I think we've done that before, but if you're on a PC, you'll have the view option on the top of the screen, audio screen on the left. You can raise the icon and you can put any comments on the Q&A and submit the Q&A as well. And then if you want to leave the meeting, not because you're bored, but because you're just had a personal reason, you've got to go, then leave the meeting is on the right-hand side on your PC. If you're on a tablet, everything should be on top. If you're on the phone, it's going to be on the bottom of the phone as well. And then there'll be poll, which will be the yes or no in order to get you participated in the webinar today. So huge thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here as part of this formal CPD today. Like to thank again, thanks a million to Dr. Louise, Dr. Diane, Jess and Artie. And it will be a CPD where I'll be issuing a certificate attendance. Please email me after the event at anil@cpdtalk.com. And then we'll get you a certificate attendance for 1 hour plus. So who I am then quickly, I think I've been there before. Love construction, love learning, love sharing, love people, passionate about giving back. 18 years plus in the construction industry now, and honored, privileged and humble for my 100th CPD. So before we start, and to put a bit of context for the panelists and the speakers, would love to see you where you're from. So if you can have your name and country as well. So if you can go on to menti.com, MENTI.com, and if you can type in 6078626, and I'm going to share the screen with you with regard to the menti.com. So just bear with me, and I'm just going to share the screen with you, and then at least we can see where we are. Okay, so if you can see the screen, we would love to know where you're from. We've got Bianca from South Africa, Yanish, hi, friend of mine. And yeah, if you can just keep putting in where you're from. Priyanka from Mauritius, Ashish from India, Sivaraman from Saudi Arabia, Arvin from Conakry, Guinea, which I believe is West Africa. We've got Mr. Jita from FLAC. So yeah, please keep putting in for us to know where you are. Already we've got people from India, colleagues, lots of colleagues in different countries in Africa as well. Lots of colleagues from Mauritius, Ruan from South Africa. So yeah, please put your comment in as we gather to pick up momentum on the talk. We've got Dan from Ghana. Yeah, so we've got 15 of you that has already put in the countries as well. So please keep putting in, and be great to see you all there as well. Okay, so at least we know where you're from, and as you can see, we've got a few colleagues, you know, different from part of the world. Yeah, so thank you very much indeed. But please keep putting, use the menti.com 6078626. Be great to see you all. And we've got Bojana from Serbia. Thank you to see you there as well. We've got Nosha from Sri Lanka. So yeah, great to see you all. Fantastic celebration of diversity today. We've got another colleague from Ghana, Ajay from Mauritius. So thank you to see you all. And we've got Philippe from Uganda, fantastic as well. So please keep putting in, and then we'll come back to you later. As I do, I'll get back to the slide quickly and introduce Louise shortly. So I'm just going to go on to that. So thank you very much. And I just want to share with you the CPD, where it started quickly, a few minutes. This is in 2014 when I started BIM in Mauritius. If you can see my slide, please, can you just put your hands up as well for me to know that? Yeah, thank you. So you can see it. Then 2015, so 2014, we had 600 participants that year. 2015, again, I worked with institutions such as Rushmore Business School, RICS to do the CPD. I then did UCLan University. 2016 was only 2. I had few issues back then. So I was in the UK, I came back to do CPD in Mauritius. But yeah, it was good stuff. 2017, I did a bit more. Where I highlighted in pink, these were like international CPD. I was in India, London, Toronto, and yeah, so that was there when I did the CPD. 2018, I again did a lot of CPD then, part 1, part 2, got to 40 CPD. I worked with PMI, I worked with engineers, so then there was that. 2019, we moved on. There was lots of CPD, lots of workshop. I was also in Cape Town, in Joburg, but the CPD keep going on. Part 2, again, there was lots of CPD done. I did one in Zambia, the first in Zambia when it came to RICS workshop. Lots of mental health talk as well. I work with PMI, Project Management Institute. In 2020, this is when COVID hits, I managed to do a few CPDs. In January, I did CPD for local contractors. And then on 67 here, that was 5 days before we went into a lockdown. And it was the evolution of concrete in Mauritius, which I had 115 participants. And then the webinar started thanks with Chong Wei Wong, which was the first webinar. And today we are on the 36th webinar. So, and then it goes on and on and on and on. Part 2, part 3, lots of webinar with international speakers before we got to today. So it's been, so just the webinar, just this year, we have 5,000 participants, which has been an incredible journey. We've got to 10,000, 10,072 participants. So just quickly in terms of summary before I introduce Louise, 63 CPD delivered by local and international speakers through 6 continents. I delivered 36 CPD, mainly RICS workshop in UK, India, Canada, South Africa, and Zambia, and various countries through the RICS webinar workshop. 99 CPD with 10,000 participants. I mentored 98 members of RICS as a way of giving back, purely volunteering with regard to giving back, and 72 in Mauritius, MRICS, 1 FRICS in Mauritius, and the rest in UK, Australia, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Namibia, Malaysia, Seychelles, and Nigeria. We have had a 150% increase in RICS membership, thanks to all the workshops we've been doing together. 1,000 plus students mentored and provided advice, 5,000 hours of free mentoring on APC. We're also lucky because of you, we've been able to donate to NGOs in Mauritius, thanks to people coming to the CPD, and then we've been use those money to give back to NGOs. And then finally, this is being marked by today by Jess, Louise, Diane, and also Brooke-Smith. So thank you everyone for being here. So just quick tribute. I want to just share a quick tribute. I want to play a video to the first women president of RICS before I formally introduce Louise. So if I just, I'm going to play a quick video and I hope we enjoy that. So let me just do a quick new share and I'm just going to go on YouTube and I'm just going to play that. So if you, just making sure we've got the sound as well as I optimize the screen, and then I'm just going to share the screen now. So just bear with me as so if you can see my screen, if you can just validate it, please. And then I'm just going to make sure that the sound is good. So I'm just going to go on top to 8 minutes. It's about a 4-minute video by Louise before we kickstart. Okay, so here we go. Louise don't know about that, so let's go.
They came back and they came to the UK a few weeks later, and I met them all again, which was lovely. So I subsequently travelled with Boris Johnson and a small group of property professionals and high-level international players, it turned out, to Southeast Asia, Indonesia and Malaysia. And I managed to get the message across that surveying wasn't just quantity surveying, it was a whole raft of across the board of valuers and planning, development surveyors, project managers, and there was just not a good understanding of how broad we are. And I was relaying this to Boris. Boris then relayed it to the Prime Minister, and I know that the legislation has now changed because of it, because it's broadened out. And what has happened and is continuing to happen is that there is now an open door, really, for companies to be able to go into Malaysia, to be able to operate there without a lot of the red tape that had previously existed. That I'm very proud of. Right conversation, right time.
It might have taken us 146 years to get our first female president, but I think neither Louise or us would have really anticipated the response that the industry has had to RICS having our first female president. It's been unprecedented, and we've done some amazing things. She's done some amazing things, particularly in terms of her sponsorship around visible women and diversity and inclusion. The launch of the quality mark on the 25th of June really highlights us doing something about diversity and inclusion for the industry in a really positive way that's all been about action. The other thing that we've had this year has been the RICS Futures Report, which Louise launched in Los Angeles at the Summit of the Americas. It's an incredible report. I actually commend the video RICS Futures to you. It's 4 minutes that will not be a waste of your time. And it really talks about what the potential is in the industry, not just for today, but for the next 20 years. And what potential there is absolutely so exciting. The other thing that we had was our Africa Summit, and I know this has been very close to Louise's heart. Africa was an emotional time for Louise in terms of actually taking Governing Council out to a place where she can see huge potential. And I can still remember at Governing Council where we talked about potentially taking Governing Council out to Africa on the back of what we could achieve in Africa. And then living it this year must, I'm sure, be one of the main highlights of her year.
It only took 146 years to elect the first female president. And I think from an RICS perspective, that is really important in terms of our own promotion of diversity and inclusivity within the profession itself. As far as Louise is concerned, she's just been a great global ambassador, like many presidents that we've had before her. I think that her passion for ensuring that we didn't miss out on Africa, ensuring that we recognise that Africa will be one of the biggest youth populations, probably one of the world's workforces of the future, and an opportunity for RICS to embed our standards early was a great point. And the Africa Summit would have been one of my own personal standout moments. I think, to turn up in Johannesburg, to bring in all of the leaders in the industry to an RICS event, and spend at least 1 hour on their national television over the course of a couple of days has to be a pretty important moment. I think, secondly, she really has led, I think, a genuine desire for some pretty significant female chartered surveyors in the profession to raise their own voices. We've had a number of visible women lunches. I think we're encouraging a whole new generation of people to contribute their voice to this in profession. And I think that's a really critical element that Louise has brought to bear.
Okay, so just wanted to share that with Louise, who is a fantastic global role model. I'm just going to go back to the slide and introduce Louise quickly. I don't think she needs more introduction than that. But Louise has over 35 years experience across the land, property and construction sectors within the UK and overseas. She has worked within 2 city councils, a national property agency, a major house builder, and the UN, and established a national award-winning planning consultancy. On selling the consultancy that she was working with to Arcadis, Louise became a partner and a UK of head of development and strategic planning. She stepped down from the Arcadis partnership in 2017 to take up a number of non-executive directorship and international advisory positions relating to the built environment, property and infrastructure. Her portfolio includes a FTSE manufacturing company, a major social housing provider, a land regeneration organization. Her commercial clients include landowners and developers, global property investors, and sovereign wealth funds. She's also an advisor to UN Habitat and chairs an international aid agency. Finally, before I introduce Louise, as the first female global president of the RICS in 2014-2015, Louise led a series of groundbreaking construction and property-related initiatives, championing diversity in the UK and across Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. In June 2019, Louise was awarded an OBE for services to the built environment and diversity and inclusion in recognition for her passion for equality across the construction and development industries. Louise, a freeman of the City of London, was named as National Construction Achiever in 2015 and holds honorary doctorate from the University of Wolverhampton, Sheffield Hallam, and Birmingham City. As a well-respected commentator and experienced public speaker, Louise is regularly asked to review the construction and investment market and comment on the housing sector and mixed-use regeneration initiative. She advocates effective use of the digital revolution while ensuring that its lifeblood, its people are infused, appreciated, and remain at the top of the game. So please join me in welcoming Louise. If you can put your hands up, please, for Louise, everyone. Thank you very much as I get Louise to share the screen. So Louise, if you can, before you share your screen, let me just quickly have a quick survey before I ask you to share your screen. So I'm going to share a survey with everyone and I'm just going to relaunch it. And if you can please let me know, if you can see it as well, how many of you, we've got almost 83 plus today, how many of you are aware of the word diversity in the construction industry? Be honest, be completely honest. You don't have to say yes if you don't know about it, because that's the whole point today. It's about raising those awareness and ensuring that people are fully aware of it. So how many of you are aware of the word diversity in the construction industry or any other industry? 50% of you have already voted. So please, please, please keep the vote in. I know some of you might not see, depending on which region you are in the world, and if you're using the different type of internet browser. So I'm just gonna end polling. 65% of you have voted, and I'm gonna share the result. So Louise, this is your first result. A whopping 60% say yes, but still 40% aren't aware, right? And this is something we need to talk about during the presentation. So I'm going to stop result and then try to do the next one. And I'm just going to launch the polling as well. And this one is, do you think diversity has improved in the last 5 years? So again, very important question on that one for Louise to really build the momentum with the panelists as well later on. Do you think diversity has improved in the last 5 years? So again, be honest, be completely what we've done in social media, in LinkedIn especially. I certainly have I've seen some improvement, but of course there's more to do for diversity, which I'm sure Jess and Artie and Dan will touch on. So I'm just going to stop polling there. And the result is here, Louise. So the result is 67% say yes, there has been some improvement, and a whopping 33% says no. So again, if you can just make a note on that, and I'm just going to take the last one before we move on to the next question. And this is here again. Have you seen more role models over the years across the built environment? Personally, I have, through the influx of social media, and I think this is a fair question, but of course, more need to be done. We need to reach out to more people. More role model on this webinar need to reach out as well. So 50% of you have already voted. Have we seen more role model over the years across the built environment? And I'm just going to end polling now and share the result. So share the result, and I will take some other surveys after part one. And Louise, as you can see, 70% says yes, and 30% says no. So I'm going to stop it there for now, and then we'll take the other poll later on. So Louise, take it away. If you can share your screen, please. And if there's, yeah, take your time, no rush. And then, but once again, everyone, can you put your hands up for Louise for her time, for being such a huge global role model for all of us today, an absolute honor. So let's see if we can share your result.
Anil, thank you so much. I'm going to just start my slides in a moment, but I didn't know you were going to show that video at the beginning. So I'm sitting thinking, my God. So that was a bit of a surprise. So let's get off the Louise Brooke-Smith show and talk about something far more important, and to celebrate your 100th event. I was so pleased to have been asked, so thank you. I am honoured to be doing this. Now, I am going to start. I want to make the most of the time that I've got with me. There is an echo on here, so I hope that doesn't cause too many problems.
Let's share your screen. Yeah. Share your screen. Let's share your screen first. I think it's the caption with regard to the PTC. If you can put on your PDD STNG. Right. If you can put on your sound in mute, so your computer sound. APRN.
Okay. How do I do that? Sorry.
Okay. Right, let's try that because I think.
STKL on BLKB.
Okay.
So there's somebody else talking. I can't work out who it is.
I know, it has to be special on 100 CPD. So
I know.
with a PowerPoint, and I think RT knows about that one.
ASRX lead.
Is to remove the sound in the PowerPoint.
NIO.
Just one sec.
BBT.
Okay.
So if you go back, go to escape,
ITRR.
go to escape, and then let's just remove the sound on the PowerPoint. So it's the turn off or delete narration on presentation. No, it is, it says in normal view. So go to a slideshow.
Yep.
And then there must be setup, slideshow, and then it says, oh, then you can click on set of slideshow option. Is there a show option there?
I'm so sorry about this, people. This is the only other way Anil, of doing this is for you to show the slides and I just say change.
Yeah, no, not to worry. I think we are almost there. Let me just check quickly. RT, and I know it should be looking behind the scene as well. So I'm looking at it. It says turn off narration. On the slideshow tab, setup group, clear the setup. Can you see setup somewhere?
Setup slideshow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Setup, and then remove, clear the play
narration.
Right.
Okay, are we nearly there?
Yeah.
I got that right?
Yeah,
Shall we
let's
start?
go.
Let's try it. I do.
Also,
no, sorry. It's coming up with the narration as well. Anil, I think it's better if you just show. Can you show the slides, and I will then go through the presentation. I'm so sorry about this.
Okay, just one.
It worked 20 minutes ago.
Okay, so let me just making sure I've got that there. It's just taking time to pick up.
While you're just doing that, let me just say that I'm going to try and make the most of the time that we've got, and I'm splitting my presentation into two parts.
Hello, my name.
We need to take the,
Louise.
let's take that narration off.
Okay, so let me
we
do that on my side. Play narration. Okay, fantastic.
If you go to the slides, and I will just say change, and if you could just change the slide over, that would be great. So we're back. We're still on number 1.
Okay, here we go. All ready to go.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience, everybody. So I'm going to use my 2 sections here to do a bit of scene setting, and give you a little context of who I am, where I've come from, and why I'm so passionate about diversity. I'm also going to touch on some of the challenges and solutions that have emerged. Emerged over the recent years across the diversity spectrum. And I should stress that it is a spectrum. It's not just a matter of gender balance, but also a balance of culture, ethnicity, religion, ability, socioeconomics, diversity, equality, and the need for their acceptance through the inclusivity approach to business has moved on from it just being a male-female debate. But inevitably, the lessons learned to date have related to the gender debate. So to illustrate a lot of what I'm going to talk about today, a lot of the data is skewed towards gender. So I apologise for that up front. After a panel chat with my fellow presenters and a review of the poll, I'm going to highlight some of the good news stories and the positive action that's taking place and where we're heading. So this is my second slide. So let's on the slide here. No, go to the next slide. Yes, the one with the police. There we go. Right, quite an emotive shot there. I'm very aware that the audience today is one of very capable built environment professionals who all have their own stories to tell and explanations behind why they're working in our sector. Mine is no, back to the, you're moving them too quickly. Let's just go back to the police one.
Yeah.
Okay, no, you're going forward. Go back. Thank you very much. Mine is a very simple story. I was a woman, I suppose, and a young woman to prove her mark in a man's world, and that was as a direct backlash after failing some years before to become an engineer. I'm going to take you back to the late 70s where this shot comes from. a time of Gary glitter and shoulder pads and power suits. Now, to some of you, that might sound like ancient history, so apologies, but it was a time of the miners' strike in the UK and huge political unrest. And it was a time when equal opportunities legislation was just sneaking in the back door. I wanted to be a mining engineer. I applied to the National Coal Board in the very early 1980s, when that equality legislation was just bedding in, and found that Mr. Brooke-Smith had been granted a scholarship for an interview. An interview for a scholarship, but Miss Brooke-Smith was dismissed out of hand. I wasn't impressed, and I took a case to the Equal Opportunities Commission, and an apology did ensue from the National Coal Board, but sadly still no scholarship. And in the meantime, I'd found boys, and so my grades at A-level did rather suffer. I did manage, however, to scrape by, and by default, I went to Sheffield Poly, one of the best moves I'd ever made. I embarked on housing studies, and it was a joint first year with urban land economics. I was one of only a handful of women on those courses. 120 people on the course, there were 2 women, but that's another story. I ended up swapping from housing and specialised into planning and development. The next slide, please. I was keen to get stuck into a job, but I didn't take a conventional route. No, instead, I worked abroad. A string of very lucky breaks and a bit of blagging about my skills with a theodolite took me to the delights of Zaire in my year out. And then that led me to working in India and Nepal after I graduated. And then I ended up working for the UN for Habitat in East and Southern Africa. Now, in between those various adventures, I took slightly more conventional roles in the exotic delights of the Estates Department at Coventry and Birmingham City Councils in the UK, and then a major UK property agency, and then a house builder. So by the time I'd qualified as a chartered surveyor, I have to say that in the early days of my career, I didn't come across prejudice or bad practice, but perhaps that was down to luck more than anything else, because I am aware that poor practice certainly did take place. And notwithstanding that legislation being in place for nearly 40 years, inequalities still occur today, particularly in terms of parity. Not that slide yet. They're all moving too quickly, Anil, just put them back. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a bra-burning feminist, because there is time for pushing the boundaries in a confrontational way, and for a time for keeping on your underwear and those matches in your pocket and being far more subtle in your approach. And I do try to be the latter, and was definitely diplomatic during my RICS presidency. Because as you've said, I did have the honour, and it was an honour, of being president in 2014. And yes, it was the first woman in the history of the organisation, but it really shouldn't have been. It shouldn't have been that unusual. Most, if not all, of the other professional bodies had been there and done it. I took my hat off to Janet O'Neill of the RTPI and Ruth Reed of REBA. And in many ways, it was quite sad that it took the RICS 147 years to get to its first woman, but possibly understandable given the nature of property and the profession and the legalities around the ownership of land. The RICS, I'm really pleased to say, has made up for it since. And when Kath Fontana takes up the mantle next month, she will be the 3rd woman president. And with Amanda in between, that will be a 50% hit rate over 6 years. That's not bad. Next slide, please. One of my goals as president was to simply raise awareness that there should be no barriers, absolutely no barriers to anybody's aspirations, whatever your background, creed or colour. Now, things had got better since the 1970s, but it was very slow progress. And it's been quite telling looking back at various presentations that I've made over the last 20 or so years and the tone that they've taken. Now I am pleased to say that there really are no barriers. 2% of women entered our profession when I started. It's now well over 20% and growing. And the mantra I tell my daughters, and indeed all my mentees, is that, no, please, go back a slide. Move the slides when I shout. I'm so sorry.
I've got a feeling it's moving by itself.
I think it might be. I think it might be. The mantra that I tell mentees that I'm asked to mentor is, you can do anything you want to. No career path is out of your reach. And being a woman opens far more doors than it closes. The art is to see the opportunities and realise that you can do anything. And by taking those opportunities as they come along, I found myself at the age of about 30 with a CV that included the private and public sectors, some very strange countries to boot. And being particularly impatient, I saw a niche in the market and decided to do it all for myself. I resigned from what was a good job with a housing developer and set up a town planning consultancy. With a lot of support from my family and good friends and a bit of luck, that planning consultancy grew into a national consultancy, which after 25 years I sold to Arcadis, one of the largest multidisciplinary consultancies in the world, where I became a partner. Now, I stepped down from the partnership last year to take up a number of non-executive and advisory positions, and those are with companies across the built environment. But I continue to bang the drum for all things EDI. The RICS was a major, and still is a major, part of my journey. And as a local committee chair and then governing council member, then president, I have been really honoured and very lucky to have worked with others on some very special initiatives that have helped shape our industry. One of those, as you've kindly mentioned, was the Sub-Saharan Africa strategy, and the other was the Inclusive Employers Quality Mark, the IEQM. When this was launched, 2014, at the end of my years 2015, it was the first charter mark for the built environment sector. We based it on an Australian model, and it enabled companies to benchmark themselves on all matters relating to diversity, not just gender. I'm going to speak more about the inclusive mark in my second part of my presentation, but let's just remind ourselves where we've come from. Next slide, please. Now, apologies for the UK-centric comments, but in 1968, we saw the Ford sewing machine strike immortalised in the 2010 film Made in Dagenham. That strike was more about grading than parity of pay, but within weeks, Ford was on its knees. And it made massive inroads. And to cut to the chase, the Employment Secretary at the time, Barbara Castle, pushed through the Equal Pay Act in 1970, which was passed through in the UK, but it has been emulated around the world. In 1975, the EU Directive on Equal Pay established the principle of equal pay for work of equal value. And this was enshrined in the UK in 1984 and again rebounded around the world. It hasn't been a panacea. There have been numerous subsequent fights. For example, the Camel Laird court case in 1988 was a very long and drawn out affair, but eventually equal types of work, male and female, were found to be the right way of looking at things. And as recently in 2011, the fight continued. In Abdullah Group versus Birmingham City Council, a case was brought on behalf of nearly 5,000 workers by the City Council. They were mainly women in female-dominated roles, such as cooks and carers and cleaners, but they weren't being offered the same terms or bonuses as their counterparts, refuse collectors or street cleaners. The workers won their case for equal pay, and Birmingham City Council is still reeling. And as cases do continue, we shouldn't forget those who stood up and were counted. The legacy the workers owe is actually to the lady on the next slide, Clementina Black. Now, many of you will never have heard of this lady, but she was the pioneering trade unionist who put forward a motion at the Trades Union Congress in 1888, well over 100 years, demanding equal pay. So this isn't something new, this has been around a long time. Hers and many other heroines are celebrated by the Fawcett Society, which is very active around the world. Legal cases continue because women in full-time employment are still affected by the gender pay gap. Official figures show men earn in the UK, and this again is reflected everywhere around the world, or generally around the world, it shows that men earn 14% more per hour than women for doing the same thing. Next slide. Equal Pay Day marks the point in every year where the average women, in effect, can stop working, being paid compared to the average man. It's a very important day, and every year it falls later and later, which indicates that that pay gap between men and women is narrowing. But even the Fawcett Society suggests it's going to take 50 years for it to completely disappear. And the World Economic Forum, WEF, is more pessimistic and suggests globally it's more like 118 years. And that's ironic when more women are entering the workplace than ever before. Nearly 250 million more women are in the global workforce today than a decade ago. More women are now going to university than men, but the inequalities remain in 4 key areas: health, education, economic participation, and political empowerment. Why is this important? Because other groups, particularly BAME groups, face the same issues. And there are ways, this is where I'm celebrating, there are ways to address it. And I talk of these in a moment. Next slide, please. Now, the WEF has found that Iceland, Scandinavia, Ireland, Rwanda, Philippines, and New Zealand have got it right. But the Middle East and much of Northern Africa certainly haven't. The UK and the US are somewhere in the middle. And over the last decade, one of the most dramatic changes has been in education. In fact, the WEF reports that a reverse gender gap is emerging in higher education, with more women than ever going to university. There are 6 times more women in university than men in Qatar. In Barbados and Jamaica, 2.5 times more women are enrolled at university than men. These figures are replicated around the world. And as more women go to university, families want to see a financial return on their education. 68 countries in the world now have more women than men in skilled positions, such as doctors, teachers, and lawyers. So it is getting better. Next slide, please. Despite this, women do still seem to struggle to get to the top of positions in business, politics, or public service. And WEF believes that only 3 countries have more women than men in leadership positions. They cite the Philippines, Fiji, and Colombia. Now, I also know that Rwanda is amongst those now. Even Saudi Arabia is improving, and one of the countries that has made the most progress over the last 10 years. But sadly, the World Economic Forum have highlighted Jordan, Mali, Croatia, Slovak Republic, and Sri Lanka as those that are falling behind, backwards. So what do we need to do to tackle it? Next slide, please. Attitudes really do need to change in the home, not just inside governments or big business. We need to change the culture around the division of labour at home. And actually, it's become very, very visible through COVID and working from home. And we are going to talk about that in the second part of the presentation. But women's work is still a thing. Men on average get paid more than women because they tend to have better jobs. There are more men in senior and managerial jobs and more women in lower paid sectors like caring and administration. And that doesn't help the statistics. Women who return to work after having a baby continue to earn less than men for many years. And part-time working has historically meant missed promotions and less experience. Why do more women end up in worse paid jobs though? Is it choice? Is it determined by local labour markets? Is it determined by your family circumstances, or is it culture? Next slide, please. There are a number of ways that have been adopted to tackle inequality, certainly in the gender scenario, and those lessons can be learned to address BAME inequality too. Enforced paternity leave can help. I make dads take more paternity and shared parental leave. In Sweden, it's been encouraged since the 1970s, And now there is an incentive for dads to spend a full 3 months at home with their young family. And if they don't do it, they're penalised. Shared parental leave was introduced in the UK in 2015, but it's still seen as quite a new thing, and not everybody takes it up. Subsidised childcare. Childcare is expensive in many parts of the world. There's a push now to be able to take your children to work. It might sound very strange, but when the Italian politician took Licia Ronzulli took her 6-week-old baby to the European Parliament over 10 years ago, the pictures caused a media stir. But since then, we've had the New Zealand Prime Minister do the same, and many others. Parenting in the Workplace Institute is a thing. Goldman Sachs is one of many firms that has on-site creche facilities, and it really does help. And the last thing I will just mention now before we have a panel discussion is the impact of flexible working. And with COVID-19, it is now becoming the norm. In a world where email, mobile technology and communications are king and queen, working from home works well, as does flexible, part-time or job sharing. People are more dedicated and more productive. So that's where I'm going to leave this half of my message. Come back to it after the panel and after we've seen some more of the poll results. Back to Anna.
Thank you, Louise. I'm just going to stop sharing. Can we have Jess, Diane, and Artie please back on it for a quick discussion? Please also send me your question, everyone, based on what Louise just said, and if I can, Diane as well. Diane, you okay to stay here for 1 more hour, right? If you just unmute yourself, yeah.
Yes, as I was saying. Sorry, apologies for that other commitment.
Yeah,
but,
perfect. You're okay to be here till 1 hour and 15. I know you need to leave in 1 hour and 15 minutes, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so we'll just be on time. Thank you very much indeed. Just quickly, if I start with Artie, what's your thoughts on what Louise just said? Just quickly your thought, but before you have the word, I just want to introduce Artie quickly, and at least then we know who Artie is as well. So if you can just bear with me, and everybody will quickly know who Artie is, just making sure. Yeah, so Artie is originally from the UK, an experienced chartered surveyor with corporate real estate background. She started her career with London Borough of Enfield as an assistant asset manager, and then asset management surveyor, and soon progressed to join John Lang LaSalle in London. At JLL, she worked with various high-profile corporate clients such as Cisco, Sony, HP, Barclays, Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank, Credit Suisse, and HP. She left JLL as an associate director to move to the Paradise, Mauritius, where she now works with Accenture as center manager. So quickly, Artie, what's your thoughts? And if you can just bounce back on what Louise just said.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, wherever you are. Just wanted to say I'm completely on board with what Louise is talking about. As a woman of colour who started her career about 15 years ago in London for quite one of the biggest firms in the world, I quickly noticed that I was the only woman of colour in my department, and it didn't bother me in the slightest, because I was there to do my job and so forth. But for me, where I worked, the company where I worked, everybody was very supportive, and it was all about what you knew and what you could do, rather than being, discriminated in any way. Having said that, I remember I was asked to sort of assist with getting more women of colour and so forth into the industry, and I remember working with a group at RICS to try to do that. We used to go to schools and try to promote the profession to young girls in particular. And I'm so pleased to see where we are now. For me, my mentor was a lady. If anyone knows her, Shelley Frost. She was an international director at Jones Lang LaSalle. Wonderful role model she was for me. And I think having such mentors is very important for, you know, for women when they're very young. And I think that generally the industry is waking up the fact that we need more diversity. There should, you know, that there should be more women of color or people of color. We should have people or you know, sexual orientation and disability. So I'm very happy to see that it's progressed very nicely over the last 15 years.
All right, thank you very much indeed, Arti. We'll just move on to Jess quickly. I want to introduce Jess quickly as well. So if I can just share the screen before I can give Jess a formal instruction. So Jess, again, we'll have Jess shortly as well. But Jess Cleland, she's the Group Managing Director for East Africa and Indian Ocean. Jess is responsible for the broad business in Kenya, Uganda, and Mauritius, delivering property management, FM, occupier services, broking, leasing, valuation, and research. Prior to her current role, Jess held the position of Divisional Director, Strategy and Consulting with Role Occupier Services Division, and was also previously Research Director at IPD, now MSCI, where she worked in London, Australia, and South Africa. Last but not least, Jess holds an MBA majoring international business, a Master of Property and Bachelor of Engineering honors in Mechanical Engineering. She served on many industry board and committee and is a regular speaker at conference across the African continent. This is how I got to know Jess as well, through the RISS Summit in Africa. In 2020, she was selected as a finalist in the 2020 API Award for Women in Africa Real Estate, while in 2018 was named Professional of the Year for the private sector category in Gauteng at the South African Women in Property Award. She's also a fellow of the Mauritius Institute of Directors. So Jess, quickly, your thoughts. I know I want to say that you're one of us because you're mechanical engineer by profession. So your thoughts, Jess, quickly. I mean, you've got a huge amount of experience across Africa and Mauritius. Quickly, your thoughts, Jess.
Thanks, Anil. Yeah, I think as this webinar goes on, we'll get into more the who, what, where, why, and how of you know, inclusion and diversity. But I think Louise's presentation was a really interesting way to start answering like the fundamental question of this webinar. It's how far have we come and how have we got to where we are on this journey? And I think the sort of setting the history, and it's interesting, similar to Arti, to look back on our own careers and see where we started. I mean, as you said, my first degree is in mechanical engineering, and so I started my career as a mechanical engineer, and I was working in London at the time. And it was for a consulting firm, and I was the only female engineer. In fact, there are only two other females in the whole company, and one was the receptionist and one was the bookkeeper. And as far as the professionals go, it was myself and the rest were all men. And that was fairly similar to what I'd experienced in my university degree. I think of about 100 students, maybe 4 of us. Certainly single digits were females. So that was kind of the environment in which I started my career. And then so when I transitioned into property as such, it actually, you can definitely see a difference, and especially in the past few years as well. And I think I'm quite fortunate to work at a company where there are so many strong women in very, very senior executive level positions. I think a full 40% of our exco is female. That said, there's still a long way to go. And, you know, even last year or just almost 2 years ago, when I was offered the role to move into this role, so I manage 4 businesses in 3 countries in Africa. And when I sat down with our CEO and started talking about, you know, there's this role and this is what you'd be doing and this is the environments in which you'd be operating, I stopped him and I said, do you really, you know, you need to be very sure that you want to put somebody female, foreign and under 40 into this role, because it's absolutely not what's going to be expected. And so if we want to succeed at this, we need to make sure that, you know, the support systems are there. And exactly what Arti was saying, having those support systems behind you is so important. And I think you know, we've benefited from it. And I think the next step is then how do we pay that forward to the next generation. I mean, I've done a lot of work with the Women's Property Network in South Africa. And one of the themes that really come through there is that, you know, for a lot of your career, you're trying to get a seat at the table. But for the women and the other sorts of diversity categories that we're looking at, once you have that seat at the table, you have that responsibility to offer a hand and try and bring others up to that table with you. And it's, yeah, again, it's something that in this role, I think that showing young female professionals that you don't have to be a 50-something-year-old male to successfully run a business in Africa. It's entirely possible. Like, you might do things quite different, but that's actually a good thing. So I think there's this chain of responsibility that we all have.
Awesome, Jess. Thank you very much, Jess. Thank you, Artie, so far. It's been great. Diane, I'll introduce you formally when you do your presentation, because you've got a presentation CV on its own. But Diane, honored to have you. I know you've done lots of work when it comes to diversity and inclusion. Your role model as well. What's your thought quickly based on what Louise just mentioned?
Great, thank you, Anil. And yes, I have submitted a long bio. Please don't read it all out. But Louise had just a fantastic journey that she laid out for us. And it struck so much resonance with me because, Louise, it pretty much matched my own. You know, it was not all bad. In fact, there was a tremendous amount of good. But yes, I sat in my lectures and I was one of 2 women. And then sadly, the other girl didn't make the final year. So, you know, but that wasn't an issue. I think, Artie, you mentioned that. I didn't actually think about it too much. And that's partly because of the people that went before us. They had done so much work, Louise, as you pointed out, that it made it that much easier for when I went through my early career stages. That's not to say we've got to the end of the journey yet. There's a long way. And what I liked about Louise's presentation was that link to where the BAME community now sits. And there's heaps of questions that come out of this whole diversity and inclusion. And I know Louise is going to expand on it a bit more because, you know, diversity is about the differences. And it's not just male, female, clearly. It's about religion, it's about race, etc., etc. And inclusion is bringing all that lovely differences together and actually making it a better picture, because the tapestry looks that much richer with that whole weaving of beautiful cloths and beautiful thread. So I'm not going to go too far into what I would like to respond to, because my presentation perhaps covers some of it, but I think that link is quite important to the BAME. Yeah. And BAME, remember, is a Black Asian minority ethnicity. So it might not be BAME sitting in my fatherland of Ghana. It might be something different. You know, it may be a religious thing if you're sitting in Asia, etc. So Anil, I'll leave it there. But hopefully I can engage in a moment or two.
Okay, we'll just get back to, obviously, Louise will present. I just want to have a quick question, which I'll be picking up from the participant. This is for Jess and Artie. What are the basic approach should one adopt to encourage diversity? So just your quick experience, how do we encourage diversity? Few tips, anything. So I'll start with Artie. You have international exposure. So few tips of how do you really encourage and promote diversity?
So when I was at JLL and I had my first baby, I noticed that there was no support for any of us working mothers, because this is also diversity in its term as well, to be a working parent. And I remember setting up a working mothers network, so we sort of get together and kind of talk about our issues and so forth. it actually caught the eye of our head of business for the UK. And kind of long story short, it's now a national thing, and it's not Working Parents Network. It's now become the Working Parents Network rather than the Working Mothers Network. So I had a hand in that. So I'm quite one of my claims to fame, as it were. So and I've heard now they're actually rolling this out internationally. So some of the other JLL offices across the globe, they're having such networks. So I think that was quite a nice touch. So I think diversity is to be inclusive, is to have that desire to bring about change, to find something that's missing in our everyday lives, which makes our job easier. For me, it was that sort of support network, just to ask another colleague, oh, my baby is doing this, is it normal? And to be comfortable to be able to do that in a working environment. Then, because of the success of that, I was also asked to join the BAME network and the and the women's network. So I ticked a lot of boxes, as you can probably imagine. In terms of actually rolling it out, I spoke about something that we did very, very early on. I think it was probably back in 2007, if I remember well. I was asked to join a group at our ICS, promote the profession to young girls in particular, to get more females, and we thought starting at school would be the ideal way, because I mean, if anyone remembers having their careers interview when you're age 15, 16, what do you want to do with your life? Surveying wasn't an option. It was, and I myself hadn't heard about surveying until I was ready to go off to university, and discovering a course which was called Property Valuation and Law. I thought, oh, what's that? And that's basically how I kind of fell into surveying. So yeah, I think it's all about being, finding the thing that's missing as well, and to find a solution.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. We'll have to move quickly to Jess, and then we'll go to the presentation of Louise. Jess, there's a question from Dr. Deva from Amity University, and he says to you, approximately which year was that, when you talk about single-digit number of women engineering students, which year was that, and how did you embrace it?
You're asking me to give away my age. Mind you, I've already given it away in a bracket. So that was, I did my first degree, was late 90s, early 2000s. So I think, yeah, so 4-year degree, 1999 to 2002. Yeah, so it was, like Diane and Artie have said, it wasn't a barrier or a challenge as such, but it was just a difference. And I think what my colleagues in the class actually found was that they probably benefited from the inclusion of females in that group, much more than if we didn't exist at all. So I think it's I don't know what the numbers are now, but I sincerely hope that they've improved since then.
Okay. All right, so thank you, Jess. We will move swiftly to part 2 with Louise, and then back to back with Diane, because obviously Diane's not limited time, and then we'll take the panelists. So Louise, if you can just take it away, and if you can.
Can I just ask Diane, when does Diane have to go?
So Diane will need to go at 8 in about 50 minutes.
That's fine. That's fine. That's great. Okie dokie. So, right, I'm going to. Oh no. Yes. Brilliant. Okay, we're back to part 2, and this is going to be looking at where we're now, some of the current stats, and where we're heading. So the statistics show at the moment. Oh dear, I think you're well ahead on those slides. Can you go back to slide 12?
Yeah.
Let's try and get back to. Okay, next slide. Nope, one in between. It's really tricky, isn't it? Sometimes.
Yeah,
It's got a mind of its own.
That's the one?
Let's stay with that one. Okay, right. So the statistics at the moment, we were talking about numbers there. They are, and they can be, manipulated in all sorts of ways. But it's around 20% of the RICS global membership is female. In some parts of the world, it pushes up to 30%. In some other parts, it's down to 10%. But on average, it's around 20%. Only 17% of our membership, of the RICS membership, my apologies, represent Generation Y. So they're people born after 1980. 4% is Black, Asian or minority ethnic, while those with disabilities are at less than 1%. And there's very little data available for lesbian, gay, bisexual or transgender LGBT membership, although the likes of Freehold and Diversity are definitely changing that and looking at the statistics in more detail. So we've got much better things to be measuring. Because if we can measure it, we can improve it. But it's never been as important to be inclusive across the built environment. And we have to do that. As we all know, and I'm sure that anybody in our profession knows, we have to have a workforce fit for the future. And we do have to have that workforce reflect the diversity of the communities that we work for. And that means that we've got to be able to attract, retain and develop talent, not least of which there be the moral and social reasons why we should make our workplaces and our workforces diverse. But it makes business sense, and I will pick some of those themes up in a moment. Without being inclusive, we're missing out on a huge proportion of potential people, and those people are potential workforce. We've recently had the Surveying the Future campaign to help attract, retain and develop that talent. And that has came along after the RICS Inclusive Employers Quality Mark, which I mentioned in the first part of my presentation. Launched in 2015 at the end of my presidential year, it has actually been recently revamped to now include areas addressing mental health. If you can believe it, even back in 2015, when we suggested including mental health as an area for monitoring and for measurement, it wasn't accepted. It was still a bit of anathema, and we didn't include it. We were told not to include it. Things have changed, thank goodness. The approach is still based on 4 key principles of leadership, recruitment, culture and development. And it highlights firms' position on where they stand on inclusivity, what they're doing, what they're aiming at, and how they can improve things. Every company is at a different stage of its journey, but there is a real commitment to diversity and inclusion, along with an enthusiasm across the sector to improve. So there are parental groups within firms, and not just the big firms, the SMEs and the smaller firms too. There's employee research groups, there are diverse role models, there are the policies which actively promote inclusive policy. There are visible diverse workforce in external PR material, which is really important. And there is an improvement on calling out unconscious bias. Let's just have a look at that unconscious bias bit. If we can go to the next slide and the next one after that. Brilliant. Okay. And unconscious bias is watching our language. And it does continue to plague our industry. And many times we're just not aware of it. These are the barriers that cause some problems. And not only to the pipeline of talent entering our profession, but also to retain and develop that talent within it, because they're just not acceptable. Language use is one of the ways through which discrimination is often exercised, but it might be unintended. For example, in English, job advertisements, he and she are used when describing an ideal candidate. In many, if not most job advertisements in German, only the masculine and alleged gender neutral he is used. And it can give just the wrong impression. And often together with a masculine form of the advertised job title, it can give the impression that women aren't invited along, they're not welcome. So there are lots of ways that firms can advertise their roles and discuss what they do in a very gender neutral way. there are lots of other ways to avoid discrimination. I'm sure everybody listening to this will be aware of a lot of them. Making sure those job ads and promotion opportunities are written in a gender inclusive way, attractive to everybody. Checking how your company is represented on websites. Small things like if you've got an event, make sure that the panel that you've got is a balanced panel and not just, as we like to call it, male, pale and stale. Just having yet another panel of middle-aged white men doesn't do anybody any favours, and it doesn't reflect the communities that we work within. And also being aware of our own stereotypes and trying to challenge them as much as possible. Do we automatically assume that the new IT person is a man, and that the new admin support woman is, the new admin support person is a woman? Because it has historically been that, but we are continuing those standard perceptions. It is common sense, and there's lots of research to have a diverse workforce. There's lots of research, there's lots of initiatives that have come along, a huge number of women's groups. Last year, or rather in 2019, MIPIN, Gendered, was a group that was launched by KPMG and MIPIN themselves. And it looked at some of the work that had been done for, I think it was PNB Paribas. It found that 30% of C-suite of any company can be women. Where that is the case, it adds 1 percentage point to net margins when compared to companies with no female leaders. Those statistics and that research is replicated in so many. McKinsey have done one. They regularly have these research pieces that look at where you've got a diverse board and a diverse company, how is it performing? And it is always performing better. Deloitte, again, also identified an 80% improvement in business performance when levels of diversity and inclusion were high. And it's also not just having that diversity as a policy, it's actually doing it. Having balanced leadership and having that being led from the top and not just dumped in an HR department. Lots of different examples of successful policies. Having a very diverse and positively diverse recruitment panel when you're taking new people on, having a strong mentoring process and system, and destigmatizing childcare. I've mentioned this before about positively advocating fathers taking parental leave. I think we might have skipped a couple of ones there, but let's leave it on that slide for the moment. So where are we going? Some positives and some challenges. Increased role models. We do have more visible female and BAME role models helping improve workforce equality that can start with schools and education. The Inspire Schools programme is not only just in the UK, it is an initiative rather like Class of Your Own, which is the logo is on the screen then, rather big letters, and similar initiatives are around the world, where the industry, the built environment industry and the surveying industry in particular, engages with schools are in socially mobility cold spots. So schools that wouldn't normally be advocating a career in the built environment, specifically to improve awareness of surveying, and not just secondary schools, we're talking primary schools as well. Because if you can get to kids as they are growing older and looking at what is happening around them and what careers that they want to go into, so much the better. And education shouldn't be a barrier further down the line. Ernst & Young has now removed its degree classification from entry criteria because they don't find that there's any evidence to say that it helps. They'd rather look at the person in the round. Penguin Books have done exactly the same, as has PricewaterhouseCoopers. They don't look at UCA points from university when they look at university entrance. So there's lots of good ways of levelling the playing field. Now, I'm just going to touch on a couple of areas that would be remiss of me not to in the next slide. And I appreciate that this might not seem very relevant, but Brexit is not just a UK issue. A no-deal Brexit, which is possibly where we are heading in the UK, will impact on everybody. It will have implications on the Equality Act, as well as other regulations and legislations, which then have a knock-on effect for the UK in terms of protected groups like age, disability, gender, marriage, civil partnerships. We don't yet know how the UK is actually going to carry on with some of its equality legislation, and the impact of the European Courts of Justice decision. Will it have an impact in the UK after we've formally and utterly left in January? They are incredibly important areas because they impact on other parts of the world. And on the other side of the screen, COVID, a little bit more positive. And it doesn't seem very positive, but it is. It won't be here forever, but the impact certainly will have a major effect on how and where we will work. We know that lockdown and restricted movement has heightened concerns over mental health, domestic abuse, race inequality and workplace sexism, and has increased a lot of economic pressures around the world, not just in the UK and in Europe. And it is going to affect disproportionately women and BAME communities, because those are the groups that are overrepresented in the sectors hardest hit by the economic impact, such as retail and hospitality. But it means that we've got to work even harder. We know from the last recession how many we needed to attract back into the industry. I've got lots of figures here, but I won't blind you with all those figures. But the last recession in 2008, we know that there was a massive effort to try and get more people through into studying and into joining the surveying world through apprenticeships. And we are going to need to do the same again post-COVID this time round. We have to be realistic and widen the gateways. That means being more inclusive and move away from some of the old stereotypes. Diversity and inclusion, therefore, remain the key to effective talent acquisition, particularly given the challenges that we're going to be facing over the next couple of years. There are some very good highlights. I'm not sure if anybody on this webinar has heard of the Hampton-Alexander review, but it's a review that looks at women at board level and at senior management within companies. And they've set some high targets. And the good news is that a lot of those targets have been hit. Women holding 1/3 of FTSE 100 board positions has been met earlier than expected. But we still need to make a push for executive roles within companies. We need to make sure that women are coming through. And when I say and concentrate on the women's position here, again, I reiterate what I said in the first bit of my presentation. If we can get it right for women, we can get it right for everybody. And the lessons learned for the gender challenges will then be able to apply to ethnic minorities and the Black community as well. So we have to keep the pressure up. COVID has escalated the move to flexible working, home working, shared domestic chores, shared childcare, and it has shown that flexible working can be successful. And businesses are currently reporting returns that actually are similar to how some firms are reporting returns that are similar to last year's records. And it's showing that with a workforce based at home, they are still as successful as they were before. Next slide, and I think this is an area that Diane's going to pick up on as well. But what I'm delighted about is that EDI, Equality, Diversity and Inclusion, has expanded to embrace Black Lives Matter, which is now mainstream. It actually, I wasn't aware of this until I did a little bit more research, but I wasn't aware that BLM actually started back in 2013 in the States basically as a hashtag, and it was a reaction against the acquittal of George Zimmerman in the States, and it was I was going to say it was an underground movement, but clearly it hit the headlines earlier this year with the George Floyd protests and in Minneapolis. And what was absolutely stunning was the speed of its growth and how important it has been and how mainstream it has become. What I wasn't aware of was, of the figures I've looked at, it says around 20 million people participated in the 2020 Black Lives Matters protests across the States this year. That's a huge number of people, all raising the same issues. It's one of the largest movements in the US history and clearly is now global. It's quite rightly escalated the needs to address imbalance, injustice, inequality, and is reflected in many groups in our sector, in the construction sector. And groups like Diversity and Freehold are really highlighting this well. I know that Diane's going to touch on this. Again, also with comments on Lionheart, the other side of this screen is about mental health. It's no longer a taboo. Mental health covers all our emotional, psychological and social well-being issues. It affects how we think, feel and act, and it also helps determine how we handle stress and relate to others and make choices. It is incredible the way that mental health has been embraced by our industry and business in general, and an amazing sea change from only 6 years ago, when we struggled to get it even mentioned in that inclusive employers quality mark document. In fact, I remember having it written in and it was struck out by others, which was damning at the time. I am so pleased that things have moved on. Next screen, quickly, I'm going to now just look at some of the blockers that still exist. And they actually are in two groups. We've got culture. It remains our biggest hurdle. Organisational culture. We've always done it like that. Why should we change? Why should we change? Because we have to change. Role models are leading from the top, and it does help to change the culture of any company. And on the other side of the screen, politics and economics, particularly given my points and my comments a moment ago about COVID. Brexit and COVID cannot and should not be used as excuses for delaying diversity. They can't be blamed for its slowing down. Instead, they should be used as the reason why diversity needs to speed up. It really accentuates the need to address this and get on with it. And the last couple of slides, if we can move to those, we should be celebrating. We have come some way. The change that has taken place in the last few years has been the quickest ever. Yes, of course, we can do lots more, but that change is getting faster. We have the opportunity to call out bad practice. Our digital systems and social media is a force for good, to highlight good practice and shout out when people get it wrong. We do have different voices in the boardroom. And we have a variety of work and life experiences, cultures and backgrounds which we can share and make good use of. We can all own the problem. It isn't just somebody else's issue. We can all own it. We can all get involved. And we can measure the progress through the wizardry of IT and digital monitoring. There is an improving pipeline for generations to come. We are inviting and welcoming and accepting far more than just the male pale stale fraternity. A lot more people are coming in and seeing the benefits of having a career in our industry and being very successful. And that's partly to do with all the various initiatives that I've mentioned. And we can and we should champion women, BAME and diversity, because it will make for a successful future for our sector. And my very last slide is a quote from Maya Angelou, who said, "We all should know that diversity makes for a rich tapestry, and we must understand that all the threads of the tapestry are equal in value, no matter what their colour, and I would add, no matter what their gender, economic status, ability or religion. Everybody matters." Thank you very much.
Wow, big round of applause for Louise Ryan. I think this is an awesome quote. Take a screenshot. And of course, this is lovely. What a great ending, Louise. Thank you very much indeed. I'm just going to stop sharing quickly. And if we can have a big round of applause, everyone. Let me get Diane quickly in. And then we will, because Diane needs to go, and then I'll pick up the conversation with Louise, Artie, and Jess. So Diane, are you here? Yeah, and if you can just share your screen. Louise, if you can switch off your video for now and then mute yourself, and then we will call you back after Diane. Diane will have a presentation of about 15 to 20 minutes, just on the work she's been doing over the past years. So if you can go for full screen, Diane, and I can't see you as well. So if you can.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly. And if you can just put your video on as well.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get to the video. Oh, here we go. Are we
Perfect.
Sorry about that. It wasn't responding as I wanted it to.
Okay, and then if you can go for full slide, perfect. All good to go. Thank you, Diane, for being here. Let me just quickly introduce yourself. I should have really introduced yourself. So I'm gonna share the screen for you, and then so you're out. Let me just share the screen with you quickly before. So hi everyone. I just want to share Diane. Where's Diane? Here we go. So Dr. Diane Dumashi started a career in managing and developing property portfolios in the corporate retail and hospitality sector, rising up to property director. She then joined the development consultancy division at Grimley JR before founding her own independent consultancy practice supporting public sector client organization, utilizing her long experience in mediation, negotiation, and delivering complex land and infrastructure projects involving economic development and land use to improve livelihood. By establishing Dumashi Limited, Diane progressed a passion to work in Africa, supporting donor agencies, public sector client organization, and land professional, specializing in the interrelationship of land, people, and power institutions associated with African land governance, institution, coastal zone management, and water resource tenure rights, and returning redundant land and property to beneficial use. Finally, Diane currently serves as Vice President of the International Federation of Surveyors, having held several officer positions, including the founder and chair of the IFG Africa Regional Capacity Development Network across 14 African countries, with former board experience including RICS Governor Council and Professional Sector Board, UN Habitat Advisory Group on Gender Initiative. Last but not least, she holds a doctorate in land policy planning and integrated coastal area management and a BSc degree in land and property. She's a fellow of the RICS and a member of the Center for Effective Dispute Resolution. Please join me in welcoming Diane. If you can put your hands up for Diane and for Dan, please. Thank you, Diane. And if you can share your screen again, please.
Great. Now, is that screen share on?
If you can reshare, please, because I want to share it. I put you off. Sorry about that.
That's all right. No problem.
Yeah.
Are we on?
Fantastic. And you're on. Thank you. All yours.
Okay. Now I can't get mine to work either.
Okay. If you can just click on it and then press next. Yeah. Click on it. Yeah.
No, I'm going the wrong way. Ah, here we are. Thank you. I'm with you. Diversity and inclusion in our profession. That's what I was asked to just have a few words and thoughts to share with you. So I'm just going to go through these 4 areas reasonably briefly. My role in Lionheart as a trustee, being part of the BAME community and what that entails, and importantly, my belonging, my sense of belonging in the international community. And then I'm just going to draw to a close talking about our own profession as far as the built environment or land and or natural resources, depending on where you actually work. So first, becoming a trustee. Do you know, I was so impressed and I've lovely and luckily got involved with Lionheart. It was a journey that I started at the beginning of the year, and it was just by chance that somebody mentioned trustees were needed for Lionheart. And I'll come back to that at the end of that slide. But the point about Lionheart that I wanted to share, the first point, is that it is enlightened. There's an unfortunate statistic that is going around, certainly the UK, and that is up to 2/3 of the BAME community believe that they're either subject to racism or have heard about people being racist against their colleagues in the charity sector. Now that's a damning percentage by anybody's measure. So I guess Lionheart were very keen, and this was about this time last year, to ensure their board was diverse. And that's why they put in an advert in January to try and increase that diversity. And that's how I then got into the loop. And as soon as I got there, which was roughly about April after going through the vetting procedure, I found that my own community, BAME community, weren't really linked into Lionheart. And indeed, globally, my friends and colleagues around the world were neither linked in as much as they potentially could be, because it's very much there to help you and our fellow professionals. And I wanted to explain this to my BME community and did a video, which you can see the link there, targeting them, but also targeting everybody else. Lionheart is the charity linked to the RICS, which is there free, by the way, to help members, their families, as well as RICS staff all around the world. My YouTube video also talked about, bearing in mind the BMA community stance I wanted to have, talked about, look, guys and girls, you can step up to leadership roles and board positions. It's proven that the charity sector is way down on its percentage of diversity in its boards. So having said that, that's how I got in. That was my journey. And this is the excitement that I hope I bring to Lionheart. Now, what about Lionheart itself? Louise, thank you. Brilliant what you were saying about mental health, because, you know, for many years, and I would say actually only the last 18 months, have we even started mentioning mental health and well-being. First of all, it was just well-being, which was a softer version. Now it's like, you know, this is pretty crucial. So mental health, and you can see down the bottom of my slide, that's the homepage of Lionheart. And there's a tab around, I don't know if you can see that, Anil, yeah. There's a tab here called mental health. Heaps and heaps of resource on there. Mental Health World Day was on the 10th of October this month. And Lionheart scheduled 2 days, 9th and 10th, of conversations around this piece. But of course, it's not just mental health. Lionheart is offering that personal, free and flexible, I've got to underline flexible, because it's on a one-to-one basis. It's not a one-size-fits-all. And you can see the list there of all the services that are on offer. It's about APC, all the way through professional development, all the way through to retirement planning, and the like. Heaps of webinars, which have clearly ramped up this year. And we've had so many more viewings, as everybody has. And Anil, I have to congratulate you at this stage of your successes in that. But on a serious note, the webinars are normally about an hour long and very, very informative. Yeah. And once you register, they're on recording as well. But there's coaching as well. And this one-to-one can be on the telephone, can be on Skype, etc. Now, I put this slide up because financial support, small grants, are available. But the one thing I wanted to also point out here was the reach. If you can see all the purple, that's where Lionheart has actually been influencing and helping our members. But the other point I want to make is that global reach. So the purple in, let's say, Australia might be 1 or 2 people. Quite honestly, we are not reaching out enough to our global community, be it, you know, whichever practice we're into. So what I would say is, anywhere in the world, if you're an RICS member, please utilize this resource. It is fabulous. I sit on a newly started task force on global reach, and we're really going to roll this out over the next 12 months. So as a quick case study, just to give you an idea, Maxim, whose name has been changed, of course, who lives in Russia and it's his wife that was a surveyor, RICS. Sadly, killed in an accident, yet there was financial support that was able to be passed over to Maxim to help him and his children. So it's such a wide, massive breadth of where the help can be placed. And there's back to work help as well. And this is just, again, a schematic to show you where we have intervened in the last 12 to 18 months. So the second point I wanted to make was me being inspired by a role model, as well as celebrating the BAME community. Louise, absolutely right. It's as much about celebrating our diversity as it is understanding where we can make things better. So Diverse City Surveyors is all about BAME network, is RICS based. But you know, I've got a question here, maybe could be debated later, Anil. You know, is BAME a real issue just in the places like the UK, Europe, America, North America? Or is it an issue globally if you take BAME to mean really minorities and ethnicity, which is how I personally like to take it. It's Black, Asian, but minorities and ethnicity. However, back to Diverse City Surveyors, very much BAME driven in the UK at the moment, with a little bit in Americas. And Bola Abisogun, the gentleman at the top of the slide, has been an absolute star for many, many years. And we're talking 10, 12 years to get this up and running, holding those difficult conversations. And back to the celebration, this month being Black History Month, notwithstanding Black Lives Matter campaign, Black History Month has always run throughout October. He's got a fantastic piece, which is a weekly promotion at the bottom of the slide. Week 1 of Black female surveyors, week 2, Black males, rising stars and young Black surveyors. So, you know, there's celebration out there, which we've got to be doing regularly, because I think that's what actually raises the profile of diversity and inclusion, celebrating as much as minding the gaps. So International Community of Surveyors, this slide is really linking to my experience of a BAME member, if you like, in the community, my working life. And I realized way back when, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, that actually I belonged much better internationally. Yes, I was gaining senior positions in the UK. It was a struggle. And I'm not sure at that time, and I actually stand by it, that staying there, becoming a director of a bigger and bigger corporation was just going to be a massive fight all the time. And I then started working internationally, taking up leadership positions with the International Federation of Surveyors in order really to celebrate my own BAME community from around the world. And I also found very early on lady presidents in member associations, such as the Ghana Institute of Surveyors, which we had lady surveyors there. 10 years ago was the first one. So Louise, you were the first. There was Ghana just in front of you, and I know you know Ghana quite well. But latterly, the RICS surveyors have finally voted in some great lady presidents, and I'll come back in a second on that. But also, I find in my homeland and in West Africa, the Nigerians, here we've got a real champion, and he's a chief registrar who champions women in surveying across the Federation of Nigeria, but it's also in Ghana too. And of course, there are professional networks, not always women-led professional networks, women-led in, surveying, but often, say in the UK, it's women-led in the built environment profession. Although I was interested to hear, Jess, I think you mentioned women in property in South Africa. Yeah. So FIG, I don't want to forget our young, because to me, this is where the future lies. The huge talent pool just about our profession, let alone anything else, but for diversity. They have got it right as far as inclusion is concerned. And businesses have got to figure and wake up to the fact that if they want to get the young, then they're going to have to make sure diversity is going to be what their organization is about. And Louise, you mentioned language connected with unbiasedness, and I completely agree. This issue about language, and I'm not just talking about do we have everything in English or do we have everything in Spanish. It's about how we're using language and some of those throwaway comments which can be so diversive. So let's really watch what we're doing, what we're saying, and how we're saying it. So drawing to a close then, it's thought leaders, it's action leaders in RICS. And as have been spoken about, thank you, Louise, for the parting of the seas that you had to do. Amanda followed from your position and followed your leadership. Amanda has also authored this very interesting book about managing diversity and inclusion in the real estate sector, a really good read. And to say, Kath Fontana, as Louise has mentioned, is our president-elect, about to take over the reins any moment now. And Anne Gray has been recently elected and will take up position as president in 2022. RICS family, as far as BAME concerned, as CEO, Sean Tompkins, personal commitment to this agenda. And he's met with senior Black professionals as well as Black Young Surveyors, actually. So across the piece, I was involved to actually listen to what's actually working. And I think he was rather surprised. And as a result, there was an initiative that was launched, and it's there on the website. And as the first steps that this initiative will take is raising that visibility. It doesn't say two-way mentoring, that's my words, but mentoring both from outward as well as inward to the BAME community. It mentions data. I would say disaggregated data. Louise, you did also mention this point in slightly different words. If we're going to measure and monitor, we need data that is specific to the target. So that the indicator has got to be right and available. And also there's going to be a launch in the Americas because BAME is an issue, as we know, over in the USA particularly. But some questions I would throw out, and have been thrown out by others too, in terms of, say, LGBTQ. How inclusive are we really? How can we really get more so? And there's some webinars that are starting this debate. As Louise mentioned, though, the gender journey is one that perhaps will need to be replicated and will provide important signposts for all these other journeys, which I think will leapfrog in speed because gender has gone through it. So it's not all about gender equality, it's about all these other things too. And I have a concern that I wonder about whether physical and mental disabilities really is taken on board. I was amazed there's less than 1% as a stat that we heard earlier. But Lionheart does a little bit with mental disabilities, as we've talked about. We've got to do more about it in our profession. Time will tell. And there's time, though, to make sure that we leave no one behind. Because, diversity and this inclusivity, we know this hymn shit. We know what it's meant to be and how it can really influence. We've got to get that knowing out to the world and embed it in culture, embed it in organization. Because our profession, sadly, as PricewaterhouseCoopers has proven in various reports, we're so far behind. We've got to stop thinking about hiring people in their own image and whether they're conscious about it or not. We're going to have to start thinking, and that might be you and me as well. How conscious are we? We've really got to look at ourselves as well as look at our profession. But as far as I'm concerned, it's a societal shift that's required also. And so my final word is, I remain optimistic, I remain passionate to overcome all the talk, and I have to say some of the worry, because I think we've got to be relentless in our drive to focus positively on people, their place. And Louise, I'm glad you had your slide. I put politics with a small p. I think that should be changed to a big P. Wow. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much indeed. Can we have a big round of applause for Dan? Thank you very much indeed. Dan, just a quick question for you. There's a question coming in. How do we get involved with the FIG? Where do we go? How do we get there?
Well, the two answers. First, look at the FIG website. So Google International Federation of Surveyors, and that will give you an awful lot of information, probably too much actually. Then email Anil, who will forward it on to me if my email address is not available. But I will certainly, as a council member, I will make sure you get linked to the right person.
Yeah, I've got it. I'm just going to put that on the link there, on the Q&A tab. I've got it. And then there was another question for you was, yeah, so it was a similar question as well. So I'm just going to bring the panel in. So if we can just join in, everyone. Obviously, Dan will have to leave us as well. Louise, what's your thoughts on what Dan just said regarding the importance of Lionheart? We talked about the mental health as well. What's your quick thoughts on that before I touch from Jess and RT?
I think it's been amazing how Lionheart has changed in recent years. It's become far more accessible and far more prominent. It was always there, people sort of knew that it was there, but its reach now has improved immensely. And as a charity, because that's what it is, yes, it's linked to the RICS, but it is a standalone charity. And its management and governance is second to none. And I've been really impressed with what it does and how it does it. It's moved away from its fuddy-duddy backstory, because that's what it was. It was looking after your own sort of thing, and it's much wider and very impressive. And I would advise anybody to go on the website, have a look at what it does.
Jess, what's your thought again from at the back of Diane? So we've got about 20 minutes to play with in terms of discussion. What's your thought regarding what Diane said, especially about providing support, where, you know, really talk about mental health and the BME as well? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I thought it was a fascinating presentation. Thank you, Diane. I think it really touches on things that we were never aware of, you know, in previous years. And I think we're fortunate now to be in a position where there is so much information out. One of the questions about, you know, how do we make senior management aware of diversity and inclusion issues? And I think, you know, there's so much information out there that, you know, it really is all at our fingertips. And I think there's sort of two approaches that that can be taken. And it's, you know, you need the big statements within a company. You need the buy-in from the top level. You need your board, your directors, to, number one, be aware, and number two, to be able to drive those, you know, the policy changes, making sure that the language is correct and all of that. So that's one thing. But I think more importantly is that, aside from the big statements, there's the many small actions that can be taken. And that can happen throughout any level of an organization. You don't have to be the CEO, you don't have to be on the board. At any position within a company, you can take actions to become more inclusive to those around you. I mean, follow Artie's example and set up the working parents group. It can be anything from, if you're responsible for the networking events in your company, make sure that there's a range of events there. It doesn't always have to be, you know, drinks at the bar after work. It can be, you know, breakfasts or, you know, linked to other sort of events as well. The recruitment process is so important. There's so much you can do around there. I think the conscious thought of saying, well, you know, I don't discriminate and everyone's on an equal platform. I think that's just a given. I mean, that's, you know, that's like saying I open my mouth to brush my teeth. It's just, if you don't do it, you're going to look stupid. But more than that, you need to make sure that the right people are given the opportunity to even be in that room, to be considered. So, you know, like we mentioned before, do you actually need a degree to fulfill like a graduate role? And by simply advertising at universities, are you automatically eliminating a whole group of people who may not have had access to universities, but who could just as well do the job. I mean, things like, you know, flexible working and the policies and what we've seen around that. So I'm not going to go on and on, but I think it's clear that there are so many small actions that can be taken at any level of an organisation, and the more we do it, the more it creates awareness, and there's this this kind of compounding effect. So
thank you, Jess. Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Jess. RT, your thoughts quickly before I take some question as well. So your thoughts again on what Jess said, and yourself being a center manager, Jess is director, Dan is a director, Louise, massive global role model for all of us. What's your thought that obviously the world's not changing, but they are role model out there, and there's a lot of young girl and young boy watching and young practitioners. What's your thoughts?
So when I first joined Essentia, I was given the wonderful task of looking after the second largest mall of the group. Not an easy feat by any way, because I was more of a background of office space rather than, you know, retail mall space. But then, you know, you're sort of, I think for me, I'm the kind of person where gender never really limited me from fulfilling the job which was at hand. So I remember sort of, you know, rolling my sleeves up and, you know, rolling my trousers up, getting on the roof, looking at things, you know, going to see why the toilet is blocked and how we can, you know, so we shouldn't, my view is that mindset, as I think Diane mentioned and Louise and Jess also mentioned, about not having this mindset of this is the man's job, this is the lady's job. A job is a job, and these kind of gender barriers should go away. And I think that it's nice that I think people are starting to recognize that now. And kudos to the people who allowed me to go on that roof. Luckily, I didn't fall off or anything, caused myself any serious injury. But I mean, I think personally, we all should have a desire to learn and to better ourselves in our career. For me, property has always been something I've loved since a child. I was always been fascinated by buildings, and I knew very early on I didn't want to be an engineer or an architect, but I wanted something else, and this is probably how surveying found me, rather than me finding surveying. I think that going forward, I think the future's bright. I think that now that people are getting more aware of diversity and its limitations, I think this is really helping our cause. So I think it's wonderful people like Louise are there as role models, and Diane and Jess. But, you know, Jess, I mean, phenomenal. I mean, you spoke about this earlier, the fact that you are in the African industry, African property industry, female white woman, you know, just amazing. Well done.
Okay, thank you for this. Thank you for this emotional ending there, RT. In terms of, I'm just going to run a few surveys because Louise asked us to run a few surveys. It'd be good to catch up on that. I'm just going to run this survey quickly, and be good to see what the audience says. So, do you feel that parental leave is important? Please put your vote in. I think we all agree it is very important, whether it's men or women, but do you feel that parental leave is important? So we can have your view quickly for 30 seconds. We've got 10 seconds left. 50% of you have already voted. So it'd be good to know. You'll be surprised by the vote here. So I'm going to share the result with you. And almost 50% of you, 65% of you have voted. So I'm going to share, I've got a few more questions. I need to stop and share the results. So maybe you can write that down, guys. So a whopping 93% says yes, but where's that 7% coming from saying no? All right, so we need to really dig deep on that. Maybe you guys are single, I don't know. But I definitely
maybe they're just being controversial, Anil.
Or perhaps they just, people might not understand what it means. It means that either mum or dad or partner can take leave to look after a new child, or you know, it's not just that it always falls on the mum's head, it falls on both parents' heads. And that's what parental leave means as opposed to maternal or paternal leave.
Okay.
It may be that people just didn't quite understand what the phrase means.
That could be a reason as well, Louise. Thank you very much indeed. And it's always good to really know if people are understanding the question as well. Quickly in the next one, this is very relevant. How COVID improved diversity in terms of ability to work across our sector? So this is really important, because if you're working behind, behind a computer, you don't really know the gender, but it's all about, the result and the productivity and the outcome. I remember reading a blog on a lady said about, will the new way of working become genderless, because we don't know who's behind the scene. So has COVID improved diversity in terms of ability to work across our sector? 50% of you have already voted. I need to stop here because we've got a few more polls coming up, and the result is here. 72% says yes, and a whopping 28% says no. So maybe quickly on Jess' vote quickly before I pick up on Diane. What's your thought on that, Jess?
Yeah, I think that there's two ways to look at it. There's the impact on individuals, but then also impacts on groups. So I mean, Louise in her presentation, made it very clear that in terms of groups working within sectors, they have been disproportionately impacted negatively. But yeah, I can see many ways in which it can be a positive thing. As you say, it reduces any restrictions around like gender or sexuality or religion or family situation, well, maybe not family situations, differently abled people as well. People who, I mean, I know you've had some fantastic webinars on creating access for people in wheelchairs or partially sighted. If they don't have to travel from home to work, if they just have to sit down in front of a laptop, that completely changes the game and really reduces those barriers to entry into the workforce. So I think there are definitely applications where it will improve the inclusion.
Diane, if you can bounce on that, and then maybe your concluding remark before you go, because I know you've got 3 minutes left. And then we'll take all the questions from the panel. So we will take all your questions. It's just that Diane need to go. So Diane, quickly on that, and then your final concluding remarks.
Quickly on that, I mean, the overarching COVID has, as we know, accelerated things that we would have expected to take a few years to get to. I mean, look at us all now. Here we are together.
Yeah.
We would have never have thought about really doing this as a matter of course. So as far as a diversity in our ability to work, the quick answer is yes, but has it played out fully? I think there's a little way to go on that as we all find our feet as to how this works. So I think the impact on diversity and inclusion will be more positive as we go along, I would like to think anyway. And just very quickly on closing, I mean, there's so much to say. So I think the best thing to say is, wow, what a fantastic presentation from Louise.
But Diane, before you go, I want to run a question, and I'd like the audience as well, because you are all role model here. And this is a question coming from Jess. So I'm going to share the screen quickly. And everybody, if you can please put your comment there. So if you can see my screen, and if you can go to menti.com. Already me and Jess and RT and Louise played with that. So what do you find inspiring in a role model? If you could please, the audience, if you can go on menti.com before we conclude with Diane, and then we can pick that up, because I think it'd be good to know before having the concluded remarks. So if you can log into menti.com and then type in code 6078626. Be good to know. So already we have passionate, strong, understanding from the role model. Ethics, huge. Character. So please put your comments in before we get let Diane go, and then we'll have about 15 more minutes to conclude. Humility, very important. What do you find inspiring in a role model? Somebody has put some numbers in as well. So it's fine. I think it's actual menti.com code. But support is one. Passion keep coming up, so it's big. So passion, passion being in the middle means that a lot of people are voting for passion. Moved on now to supportive, very important. So I'm sure all the roles models are here. Charismatic, strong leader. Yeah, please keep, 15 of you have already put some comment in. We've got more than 90 of you here today. So if you can just please give you a few more seconds before we go. But passion keep coming up. Support, charismatic, integrity. Yeah, so again, empathetic. So perfect example, motivation, open-minded, facts, helpful, motivator. So please keep your vote in. And before we say goodbye to Diane, so the three keywords Diane can bounce back is passion, supportive, and charismatic and strong. Good listener as well. So please put in, and then I'm just going to stop sharing. So Diane, before you go, what you've seen there, what's your comment quickly?
Oh, well, I mean, all of the above are very, very good. But if I draw on what I like to see in role models, I think it's certainly the passion and the inspiration is so important. But that supporting, mentoring and humility, I guess, are the real keys. And one thing I can't see there, perhaps visionary, the courage to have the vision and to roll it out. And Louise, your fantastic quote from Maya Angelou, which I think we'll all be using now, but having read a lot of her books, one thing that struck me, and if I think of her as a role model, which she was when I was young, and that was a phrase when she said something like, I finally woke up and realized to be happy with the skin in which I am born with. And I think that's what diversity and inclusion is. Happy with what you are, and that happy that you as a person are able to bring those differences into your profession, but also into your life.
All right. Thank you. Can you have a big round of applause for Diane? We are left with 15 minutes. So Diane, thank you very much indeed. I know you need to go. Your meeting starts at
Anil, thank you. Thank you, Louise. Thank you, panel. And thank you, everybody, for listening for 2 hours. Thank you. Goodbye.
All right. Thank you very much indeed. So we'll pick up a few questions quickly. Louise, you've got a question here. Hi, Louise, ma'am. This is from Naushad Mohammed. Can you please discuss few things, the diversity in the work environment in Sri Lanka? Because I'm really shocked after looking at the stat that you have shown, because the statistic you have shown is very true. So quickly, your thoughts on that to Naushad.
Yeah, it's a statistic that the World Economic Forum, they review how countries are faring, basically. And if you go on to their website, and it's an extensive website anyway, but you can look up any country and you can just look at some of the basic information about how they're addressing diversity, how they are, where women, particularly women, sit in the workplace. And it does show this scoreboard of the countries that are improving year on year. So places like Saudi Arabia that, you know, historically have not had really good press have improved. Now, if you were going to play devil's advocate, you'd say, well, they came from a very low position, so any improvement's better than nothing. But they've continually improved, and parts of the Middle East have continually improved. But then some surprising places like Sri Lanka haven't, and they've waned a little bit. So it's the way that the World Economic Forum measure ongoing attitudes towards women and women in the workforce, and it's statistically based. I think there were a number of other people who've commented, and there are lots of great examples, particularly, you know, okay, Sri Lanka and India have a interesting relationship. India have taken a very different approach to having women on boards. They've taken a far more positive approach to women on boards. It could go further rather than just having a token gesture. It should be a little bit more balanced, but it's better than not having anything at all. So there are lots of places in the world that are surprising in their ability to continue to improve from a diversity point of view. They've got to start somewhere, and it's basically building on it, not going backwards.
Okay, thank you much indeed. There's a question for Jess. It's a tricky one actually. Have you ever been on a work site where you noticed this dynamic? People of color made up a majority of the laborers and tradesperson. White men made up of the majority of the designers and managers. And there was not a woman in sight. Have you ever asked yourself, is this dynamic going to stay the same forever? Could the answer be dinosaurs are extinct because they failed to adapt?
Yes, the answer to both. Yeah, I mean, my first job was working in an aluminium smelter, and I'm pretty sure I was almost the only female on the plant site at any one time. I certainly had the female change rooms all to myself, so that was, you know, one benefit. But yeah, in terms of changing, I absolutely think that that it's going to. I think the fact that we are here discussing this type of thing today is sort of testament to that movement to change. And I think Louise really nicely outlined, you know, where we've come. But as we've been saying, there's still a long way to go, and it's not going to happen just by itself. You know, it's a process, and there has to be an awareness. So as I said, there has to be that buy-in at the top, but then there's actually a process that has to actively be followed. Once you've got that buy-in and that commitment, you really have to understand, where are the gaps? You know, where are, you know, we lacking in terms of diversity and inclusion? So we need to know where to focus and what are the benefits to doing so. I think one of the whole kind of founding principles of this is the why. Is it so important that we you know, pull through the diversity and inclusion? And it's, you know, there's so much research. Go out and Google it on, you know, the performance of companies, you know, the innovation, the image of companies, the transparency, the agility, the talent attraction. So there's all those reasons as a, you know, commercial entity why you should do it. But then there's the human element as well, that, you know, we're human beings and we should be doing this. So, you know, we need to have those targets. We need to have plans to work towards them. They need to be targets that are not arbitrary. We can't just say, you know, pick a number and we want, you know, 30% women or 50% people of color. You know, there has to be some thought and some reasoning behind it, and understanding the benefits to that as well. And then things work through on their merit.
Thank you, Jess. I've got a statement from Conceptor. She's a chartered surveyor. I'm glad to have listened to these powerful ladies. I have faced rejection at work after giving birth to my first baby. I was laid off. I'm hoping that I will rise against the odds and motivate young mothers who are struggling with a job. Thank you, Anil, for this webinar. Everybody is such an inspiration. So thank you, Conceptor. Already you're making an impact. Louise, what's your thought? Maybe if I ask Artie first, why we need to do what we're doing now, just for someone like Conceptor and many women watching today.
So actually, I was wanting to comment on this one. I could see it coming up on my little panel here. First of all, Conceptor, have the faith. You'll get through it. I'm a single mum of 3 kids, and I find it difficult at times. It's very much a juggling act a lot of the time. You know, when you're, you know, having to sort of work late, like I am today. But bear with it. You know, it will get better. You will find your way. And for me personally, I think trying to get as much help is very, very important. Don't try to do it all yourself. Never be afraid to ask for help would be my advice to someone that's struggling.
Okay, Louise, your thoughts on that, by inspiring a lot of young men and even women, men, both, you know, but obviously this is coming from Conceptor. What's your advice to her and many more?
If Conceptor is saying that she got laid off because she had a child, then shout out about it. because there are very few places in the world that does not have legislation in place to protect against it. Very few places. And if you've been fobbed off, shout about it and never be afraid to shout out, and always reach out to other groups. As Artie's just said, there will be groups who will be able to support you, because if there has been a wrongdoing or something has not taken due process, you can do something about it. So never be afraid, never just take it on the chin. Look behind the scenes and find out what the real reason was. If there were realistic reasons why you were laid off, then like Artie said, don't fall down. Don't be disheartened by it. There is always another way through, always. And there are lots and lots of people who've been there before and worn the t-shirt and get their support.
Yeah.
See how they've got through it and get their support.
Thank you very much indeed. There's a question goes to Artie. We've got two directors here. We've got about 15 minutes left because we want to get to half 4 and half 8. And it's from Dr. Deva from Arcadis University. Not a question, but a comment, but I'd like Artie to explore that. Companies in India must have one women director on the board, at least on listed companies. What's your thought on that, Artie?
I don't know if I can comment much on India, but I'll try. I will just give a very general, answer. And I'm just following on from another comment I can just see about quota systems. I'm not very comfortable about talking about quota systems, like to put people there because they tick a box. People should be in a position because they are good at their job and they deliver what they need to deliver. Having said that, I think any kind of representation of diversity must match the population that you're surrounding. So, for example, you know, if you're, let's just say you're in London and you take and you look at all the socioeconomic groups and the ethnicities, let's say it's, I don't know, 50%, 20%. This is what your board should match. So you're representing your local population. Now, for example, in India, if you're sort of breaking it down, if you're saying, I don't know, 50% are Hindu, 20% are Sikh, and I don't know, another 20% are Muslim, then your board should represent that. It should represent your local population. Is my response to that.
Jess, before I move on to Dr. Louise, you've been a director, you're an inspiring role model, you've been around for a while. What's your advice to what Dr. Deva said about being a director in every listed companies or even unlisted? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think my advice to other maybe young professionals, whether they're female or any other sort of minority, I think there'd be 3 things that I would say. So to be able to advance yourself to get in these positions, the first thing would be get a mentor and a sponsor. Understand that there are 2 different roles. The mentor is who you turn to for advice and help to build your career and identify strengths and weaknesses and work on those. Your sponsor is somebody else who is sort of an advocate for you within your company, who is maybe at that level, at the board level or the level you want to be, and they can be your voice in that room so that when opportunities do come up, they can put you in a position to be considered for them. So those 2 things are very important. I think the second thing is to don't be shy to put your hand up for these roles, even if it's way above, where you are or where you should be. I think I was 26, I think, when I applied for my first associate director role in my company. And it was too big a step at the time, but I still put my hand up, and my boss actually sat me down afterwards and explained, said, this position isn't the next step for you right now, but the fact that I know that this is where you want to go, we can make it happen within the next X number of years. And by the time I was 30, I was appointed as a full company director. So, by kind of putting your hand up. And then I think that the third piece of advice that I would say is really, firstly, define and then be very strong in your own guiding principles. So in terms of your character, know what is important to you. So for me, it's in decision making, it's always applying a sense of fairness, like what is fair in any situation. And also, you know, if you say you're going to do something, do it. So those are the sorts of things that I try to just use it as a foundation for my decision making. So I think, yeah, if that helps someone, that's great. I will be very pleased.
Louise, what's your thought quickly on director for each company? You've been a role model again, as I've said 100 times, but I will say that again 100 times. What's your thought to all of us watching this today?
I think that all the comments made are incredibly valid. I think any there has to be true representation. If you're sitting on a board, that board has to represent the people that you are representing and the communities that you're working in. That is, it should go without saying, and they shouldn't. I've never been an advocate of quota systems, of having just one person on the board and, you know, tick that box and, you know, we filled it with a woman, great. It should be the best person for the job. It's interesting that the question has come from a gentleman from Amity University, where the School of Built Environment is. It would be interesting, and I appreciate that you may not be able to respond, but it'd be interesting to see what the student numbers are like at Amity in terms of that gender split, and where people go, what jobs do they get, whereabouts do they end up. Because one of the critical areas is that we can't appoint enough women to top boards or at the top end of the executive level if there isn't a pipeline of women coming up below. One of the extremely effective organisations in the UK is something called Real Estate Balance, which is looking at that pipeline of women coming through from primary school to secondary school to university to the career ladder. Because if you improve that pipeline of women, you've got a better group of people to choose from. You get the best people, and that is one way of doing it. You can't aeroplane people into these positions, and you can't have token gestures. It backfires and doesn't do anybody any favors. Okay, thank you very much. We've got 10 minutes left. Just quickly, a question goes to RT, being an RICS member. There's a question asking, does RICS top personnel represent diversity in terms of nationality, religion, ethnicity? And don't forget, we are still waiting for the first president in Africa for RICS. What's your point on the RT?
Oh gosh, I think we're getting there. It would be my first response to that. There's still a lot more work that needs to be done. There's a lot of candidates out there who would be suitable to sort of, you know, be, you know, leading us in the future of all works of all backgrounds. So we're getting there.
Okay. Jess, I know you're not a member, but you've been in many RICS talks. What's your thought on that in terms of really being a more diverse and representative institution?
Yeah, I think with anything, and this isn't limited to RICS, it's any company, it's any organization. I really believe in the foundation of education. As Louise said, it needs to happen at that level, and it will then take time as graduates come through and get built in the right way, but it's the only way to make it a sustainable, real change. And the importance of sort of guiding students at that level, where the last couple of years of their matric, or within their university degrees, it's again, it's giving people a hand up to get to the table. It's getting them in that door. I mean, I used to, when I lived in Johannesburg, on a Saturday, I used to go teach physics to grade 11 and students who gave up their Saturdays to come and attend extra schools because they weren't getting school classes, because they weren't getting what they needed out of the school system. Yeah, and there were these kids in these classes who, yeah, I figured if they're willing to come and sit on a Saturday and learn about physics, then the least I can do is, you know, help teach them. And some of these kids were saying, you know, there's nobody in their family who's ever been to university. There's nobody in their street who's ever been to university. There's nobody who in their, you know, broader community who's ever been to university. And yet they're sitting there and they have the opportunity. They just need that encouragement to be that first one. And then they become the role model for their sister or their cousin or their neighbor. And then that grows and grows. So yeah, I think that's where the focus is.
Okay, thank you. There's a question to Louise, so I'm just going to ask that to Louise quickly. Obviously, there's Dr. Ibrahim Adia. Thank you to all the presenters for the excellent webinar. I have learned a lot on diversity today from Dr. Ibrahim Adia, so it's amazing. So just quickly, Dr. Louise, you're the role model for many female. I happen to get to know you about your successful Anil, and I must say, I'm very inspired by you seeing your amazing achievement. The sector has also been infamously defined as being among the most chauvinistic, with an extremely macho culture, which is hostile and discriminatory to women. This often results in women having to act like men to be successful, or leave if they are not adaptable to the culture, or they remain in the industry without behaving like men, but they maintain an important position with no real power to make impactful decisions. My question to Dr. Louise is, as a female RICS president, as a female, things must have been very tough for you, making an amazing mark in this industry, juggling with family and work. What would be your advice to the aspiring ladies new to the industry in this new emerging era of diversity and technology? What's your thought on that? And then I'll bounce back on Jess and Artie before we close out.
My advice is get on with it. Stop hanging around. Just get on with it. You know, it's sadly there is a continual misnomer of, oh, how does she do that? Juggle children. How often do you actually ask a male colleague that? They've got kids. How often do you do that? And I'm sure, I know that the question is posed with very good intentions, but any woman coming into this career, or any career, get on with it. That's my advice. And I appreciate that people have different characters, they have different energy levels, they have different passions, and they have different backgrounds. And as I mentioned right at the beginning of my presentation, there are different situations, whether or not it's economic, whether it's family obligations, but never, ever, ever let anybody say you can't do it. There are always ways through, always. And it's my attitude and my advice to anybody coming into this profession, no matter how daunting it might seem, is that it is a welcoming career, it's a welcoming sector. Take the opportunities, recognise the opportunities, and never ever give up. Keep going.
Wow, awesome. Just quickly, anybody watching, anybody relaunching their career, anybody thinking twice whether it's for me or not? What's your advice?
Yeah, I think one of my previous answers sort of outlined some of the advice that I would give. But I think the other thing that I would just sort of want to close on to draw together, I think one of the themes that's come through this discussion, through the conversation, is that of leadership and being a role model for others, because that's one way that we can really, open doors to diversity and inclusion. And going back to that mentee poll that we did earlier, all those characteristics that people look for in an inspiring leader. It's that strength, that support, the ethics, the humility. If that's what we are looking for in our leaders, I think that the question is, are we ourselves embodying those as well? Because everyone at every level, whether you are the CEO, a middle manager, an intern, everybody is a role model for somebody else. So whatever you are looking for in a leader, make sure that you are doing that yourself. Okay, thank you, Jess. Artie, talk about something about things. If things are difficult now, it will go away eventually. It takes times. Be patient. What's your final word to all the young people, male and female, watching you today?
My greatest bit of advice, and this is probably also from my personal experience, is surround yourself with positivity and with positive people and people who think like you. And I think then, as Louise says, get on with it, and everything else will fall into place.
Okay, thank you. I got one more question because the diversity question, which I'd like to run, and I'm just going to launch that now. And if everybody can vote, please. Would you promote diversity wherever you are? Because initially there was a split of 65 to 70% who knew about diversity. Now you know there's more than 68 70 participants today. Still with us after 2 hours and 30 minutes. Would you promote diversity wherever you are? To me, it's second, it's a no-brainer. You know, and this is what the screen look like right now. It's as diverse as it can get. Obviously, Dan has left us, but please, please, please be honest. We're not forcing you. This is totally impartial. Would you promote diversity wherever you are? We've got about 5 seconds, and already 60% of you have voted. And I'm just going to now end polling now. So I'm going to share the result with you guys. And this is what the effects of role model does. We have a whopping 100% on a Thursday evening from across the board, from the UK to Mauritius. So please, can you put your hands up, everybody, for a massive 100% diverse environment. Now, before I conclude, I want to share something with you as I do. We've got 5 minutes left to make it a 2 hour and 30-minute video. So let me just share my screen with you. Quickly before we get there. So just 1 sec, and right, here we go. So let me just share the screen quickly. There we go. So and just stop sharing as well. So we've done the survey. To conclude, I just want to share this book with you. Louise' great friend Amanda and Judy Gabler. The book is called Managing Diversity and Inclusion in the Real Estate Sector, and this is what our CEO, Dr. Sean Tompkins. Louise, Sean said hi and hello to you. He actually sent me a message on LinkedIn to say my regards to Louise. What Sean goes on to say, at RICS, we are committed to the removal of barriers, establishing flexible working practices, new career path, and overcoming the gender pay gap. We're ensuring underrepresented groups are seen to have equal status in our profession. I think there was a question asked about how diverse we are. And we are tackling unconscious bias. Today, with the technology and resources available to us, there should be no excuse for a person, gender, sexuality, race, or creed, preventing them from making their full contribution. I congratulate the authors, which is Amanda and Judy, in continuing to champion this vital issue. And if you want to know the difference, the book goes on to say, diversity is about differences and individuality. We must recognize that each of us is different and that it is important to value and respect individual differences such as the gender, ethnicity, nationality, age, background, education, working and thinking style, as well as religious background, sexual orientation, ability, and technical skill. And finally, inclusion is about creating an environment where differences are embraced and where all people feel and valued, where they can bring the differences to work each day and where they can contribute their best person in every counter, the personal best in every counter. So I want to share something with you which Louise participated in 2018, right? This is a small surprise for Louise, okay? And I asked Louise through LinkedIn, would you love to do a video for our first groundbreaking diversity summit in Mauritius in 2018? And Louise, without thinking, said yes. So let me share this with you, okay? And then making sure I've got the sound. So you love this video, guys, and I'm going to share that now. There we go. So, right, if you can hear the sound and the video, please put your hands up. Off we go. Welcome to Remaining Patient.
RICS having our first female president.
Okay, so that was a quick surprise to everyone. I'm just going to go back to terminate the PowerPoint. It's been great, and of course, Louise was part of it. I didn't know Jess then, I didn't know Artie then, otherwise you know I've been there. So this has been a great summit, and we've talked about the question, take care, be safe. It's been great, and I'm just going to have the final support of everybody. So thank you, everyone, and the final word of wisdom. So I'm just going to stop sharing. There's been some comments coming on the tab as well. Dear Louise, thank you for the presentation, fantastic job. There's just been some advice. So I'm going to start with Artie. Your final word of wisdom, why diversity is so important and why we need to work harder to become a more diverse world.
Thank you. Diversity is very important, as we say, because we have to shape our futures, our children's futures, and it's important that we ourselves be role models to the next generation. Therefore, this is why I think diversity is very important. Make a change.
Thank you, Artie. Thank you for your time, effort, and being such a role model for us in Mauritius as well. Thank you for your career path as well. I'm sure you inspire many in Mauritius and everybody watching us today around the world. Jess, again, let you know, Jess and Artie are both friends. So Jess, quickly, what's your thoughts and your final word to everybody who's watching you today?
Yeah, I think diversity and inclusion is so important because, as you just said in your quote, it's about giving people space to be the best that they can be, so they can perform their best, they can grow to their whatever direction they want. And the reason that it's so important is that collectively we are greater than the sum of the parts, and we need all of those parts to be able to produce the best version of us as a collective that we can be, whether it's a business, an organization, a community. So that's thank you for having me, especially on this milestone. Congratulations again.
Jess, thank you very much again. I can't thank you enough. I know you're a regular speaker on my webinars now, and I'm sure we'll keep going to go. And finally, Louise, I can't thank you enough for your time, for the power you bring to the planet, for being such a great role model. You inspired me since I saw you back in the days. And I know you inspired many around the world, being the first woman president, and you create hope. Hope is very important. Like if Louise has done it, maybe we can as well, you know. So Louise, what's your final word to all of us, to the panelists and to all the incredible audience. After 2 hours and 35 minutes, we still got 70 participants with us today on a Thursday evening as well. So I'd like to thank everybody. Louise, what's your thoughts?
Okay, and we are all role models. That's the critical thing. But diversity is ethically and commercially sensible. It makes sense. What's not to like?
Wow. Just quick one. We've got a few messages coming in. You know, Philippe, congratulations to all of you. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you, Neil. So all I'm going to say to everyone, I am a bit emotional. 100 CPD Talk is being honored properly, privileged, and I can't thank you all enough for doing that, and it worked well. This is the new way of doing things as well. I never thought one day we'll be talking like that. So like you just mentioned, everybody, it has to be diverse, it has to be adaptable, it has to be resilient, and like you said, go and get it. You know, if people are, you can't feel sorry for you because nobody else will. So, but you got to go for it, and Louise has done it, Jess has done it, and already Artie has done it as well. So I can't thank you enough. I don't want to go. I just don't want to go because we could be talking here all day long. But all I'm going to say, thank you. So can I ask a big wave to everyone? If you can have a big wave to the audience before we conclude. We will have a recording on YouTube as well. So we will immediately after, hopefully within an hour, it will go on YouTube as well. So everybody, all the participants, can we say a big round of applause with your little emoji, please? To all the panelists today, with Diane as well. Unfortunately, she had to leave. So thank you very much indeed. Once again, a big wave, guys and girls, and take care, and we'll see you when we see you. Thank you very much indeed. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.